You've just got the latest Armageddon box set and you're wondering, how am I going to paint all these models? Well, don't worry, we've got that figured out for you. Stay tuned. Welcome to The Average Painter. I'm Simon, he's Geoff. Geoff says hi. Today we're comparing 3 different ways to paint blood angels. Sure, everyone's told you the right way to do it, but which one really is? Airbrush, Drybrush, brush. We're going to try them all. And throughout this process, there are going to be some common steps. For example, how we do weapon casings, black trim, metallics. They're going to be the same for all 3 options. So the key difference here is how we do the armor. All 3 of them, we're going to prime with a Mephiston red spray. Straight on, straight over, straight up, and straight down. For a base armor, we really want 2 tones, a shadow and a highlight, and we want to kind of keep it really red. So airbrush is really good, right? So for this one, I take Watercolors 5. So it's a kind of really dark, rich red, and the Watercolors paint's actually fantastic through the airbrush. So I cover the entire model in this color. This gives us a really deep, kind of burgundy tone to start with. And with that dry, we load up some Pro Acryl Bold Pyrrole Red. We're just going to kind of shoot this from above. We really want to keep a directional tone, and that should catch all of the top surfaces. Now, this doesn't take as long as you think. I think for us it took about 10 minutes of airbrush and get it done. There's a little in setup, there's a little in pack up. So here you can see the airbrush is completely finished. And I think for kind of bright contrast and transition, you can't beat it. So that's airbrush. Quick, really good look, but a little bit of maintenance. And I think after I completed the airbrush model, I sat here and I thought, man, this is the winner. And then I did the next one. So let's talk about layer next. For both the layer and the dry brush, we took the same prep steps. So we still have this sprayed model of Mephiston red, and I'm going to put a really thin coat of Philippus pink contrast. I'm going to water it down 1:1 with water, and we're going to cover the whole model in this. 2 things happen here. 1, gives us a really beautiful recess shade. So if we talk about the systems, whether it's like a base shade highlight model or a dry brush model, having a really strong recess shade is important to creating that contrast story. And this is something that the airbrush didn't do well, because all those shots from high oversaturate or over contrast the top of the model, and we lose some of the recess shading. So let's start talking about the layer. The layer took the longest amount of time. I get my bold Pyrrole red, I water it down so it's reasonably thin. It should have good consistency, but a nice thin layer. And I start to hit all of the high surfaces, the tops of the knees, the top of the knee pads, and then I work over the entire model in thin layers, grabbing those highest points and bringing them up. Sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 layers to bring that brightness up. This looks really good with sharp and defined small areas. So things like his knee pads, belts, edges, really great. Where it struggles is getting that same beautiful high contrast over large round surfaces, shoulder pads, can be really hard. And that's probably where I fell apart a little bit here. For me, the whole shading process on this model took about 40 minutes. So it is a relatively large investment of time, which means the layer method actually took the longest. So at 40 minutes on this model compared to about 15 minutes on the airbrush. But with it done, I think out of all of them, it had the highest contrast. And when I'd finished this model, I thought, man, this is it. This is the winner, until I did the next one. So we take the same base with our dry brush, and I'm going to throw kind of 3 different shades out on my palette here. A burnt red, that bold Pyrrole red, and then I added an orange, which was a terrible mistake that I had to correct later. But I start by just adding a little bit of moisture to the brush. We're going to work that burnt red in. I'm going to take most of it off on my cutting board, or you can use a texture palette, and then I'm going to start brushing, in this case, in circles all over pretty much the entire model. What we're doing is lifting that Philippus pink recess shade up to like a burnt red all over. With that done, we don't wash the brush. We don't take the paint out, we don't muck around. We just add another color to the brush. So I'm adding half burnt red, half bold Pyrrole red straight in here, and then we go again. But this time, more high spots, less dark spots. We're kind of covering, in this situation, maybe 60-70% of the model. With that done, we don't wash the brush. That's right, we just go straight now for our bold Pyrrole red. And this is going to hit about 50% of the model on the upper facing surfaces. So with the bold Pyrrole red done, I'm going to add just now a little bit of orange to it. Now I talked a little bit earlier about us wanting to get to a really high contrast red without leaning into yellows, oranges, or whites, because that goes pink or that goes orange. And it turns out when you add orange to the mix, things go age. So after doing this, looks great. The graduation of color is fantastic, but we end up with like a brassy red instead of like a real red. Easily fixed. What I did is I went back with some bold pyrrole red over the top of the orange, and it kind of returned it to that really rich red saturation. So I'm really happy with this. This though, it took like 6 minutes. So 6 minutes, 15 minutes, 40 minutes, 3 really different spans in time. For blacks, we used Pro Acryl Coal Black for shoulder trims, weapons, casings. I went over everything in that. And you might say, oh look, I've covered over a little bit of the metallic areas. That's fine, because I'm gonna come back and fix that up. For silvers, we used dark silver. For our weapons, for our vents, for our casings, and for like the breathing tubes. And then for the chest eagle, I'm a purist. Blood angels have gold chest aquillas. They do, they have, they will. It's just true. And then a little bit like on boulder casings, trinkets, all that kind of stuff. For my gold, I don't actually use gold. I use bronze. It's actually really cool. I like it. It's a nice deeper shade. I think it adds a lot more depth than a pure gold. It's not so shiny. Yeah, use bronze. That's done. The details, we need a couple different methods. You can either do a layer method, which is kind of like a 15 to 20 minute investment, or you can do like a contrast method, which is a bit quicker, about 10 minutes. I've got a separate video that compares the two of these, so go check that out if you want to know how we did that. But for the dry brush and the airbrush models, I use the layer method. And for the layer method, I use the contrast method, which makes no sense. I use the quickest one with the slowest one. Okay, with that done, eyes. We just pop some ivory in to start. We'll get Geoph to do it. Geoph, we're doing the eyes. Geoph. Paint the eyes, Geoph. Paint the eyes, Geoph. If you add a bit of moisture, just dampen the socket before you do it. It'll allow the paint to flow a little bit better in there. And 2, make sure the paint is ready to flow. So in this case, we're using bright ivory, but it is a little bit watered down to that kind of layer consistency, so it flows in. It doesn't need to be fully opaque. What we do need it is to fill, because what we're going to do is use the real true power of contrast for these eyes. So with that dry, a little bit of warp lightning, we'll drop that in there, and it fills in nicely. It'll run to the edges and create a darker outline and a brighter inset. Beautiful. And then finally, we get a little bit of a, like a yellow green or a nice bright green. We are going to use this one right here, and it is called bright yellow green. Yeah. And all I want to do is just put a little stripe or a dot in the center of the eye. So this just brightens up the middle. So done. I do the same thing for all the models. All of them, same treatment, same eyes. Even Geoph could do it. But in fact, Geoph can't do it because Geoph failed miserably, didn't you, Geoph? At this point, all of the paint's on the model where it needs to be. We're going to do a little bit of tone work to bring things down. I'm going to use a black wash all over the weapons, including the silvers and black alike, just to create some depth. And then I'm going to use like a flesh wash, so a nice kind of ruddy color. And I'm going to put that all over my bronze or gold colors, just to create a bit of depth. I really like that. And now we're done, except for the bases. So in this case, what I do is I got a whole video on this. Yeah, I made a video on how we did this, and I made some horrible mistakes, so maybe watch that and don't do what I did. But let's do it on here anyway. Couple of rocks, couple of grass tufts, throw some sand on, stick it down, and call it a day. And then the most rewarding part of any paint is just to run that last paint around that base rim, and you're done. We're going to measure this in 3 areas. We're going to talk about quality, how good it looks, speed, how quick it was to do, and ease of use, how easy it was to do. Good, let's start with airbrush. Airbrush gives a really good finish, but it's not necessarily that quick. So let's talk about quality. Quality is excellent. We're going to give it, I think, out of all the methods, it's one of the best, but it does obscure recessed detail. So let's give it 7 out of 9. Let's talk about ease of use. There's a bit of a skill overhead here to get this right. You need to have the right equipment, time. So we're going to give it a 5 out of 9. And then finally, for speed, it's about 15 minutes. Actually pretty good. So kind of middle ground, we'll give it 6. Layering, I think the result was pretty good, but it's patchy in a lot of areas. It certainly took the most time. So for time, we're going to give it like a 2 out of 9. For quality, I think it was the highest contrast. I think it brought the best red, but there was areas where it's patchy as well. So we're gonna go for a 6 for the quality. And the final one is how easy was it? Well, some people find it difficult and some people don't. I think if you're going to paint, having a good layer skill set is incredibly important long term. But let's just say from an ease, it's about a 6 out of 9. It's not something anyone can do easily out of the box. It's certainly something you can grow into. Which leads us to Drybrush. And I really like this method. It was the quickest, 9 out of 9. It was the easiest. Like literally, I'm gonna say 8 out of 9 because there's a little, if you follow the guides, it's super easy. And then ease of use, finish. Well, actually out of all of them, its color transition from depth to highlight was the best. So we're talking like a solid 9 out of 9 here, which means I'm 26 out of 27. High five, Drybrush. You're killing it. It's the result nobody expected in the competition nobody asked for, which is pretty much the premise of this entire channel. Any questions, throw in the comments. Like what we're doing? Like. Want to see more? Subscribe. Want to see Geoph? He's going to be in the comments. He can only talk in all caps. I can't explain that. It's just a thing he does. And that's us. Geoph says bye.